Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a pattern called Hopscotch. This is from Doug Lecco of Antler Quilt Designs, and it's a table runner, and it uses charm squares and a background. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this pattern shows two different runners here. They're made exactly the same way, but this one on the top uses a focus fabric in the middle of each square. And that's really nice if you have a special fabric that you like a lot, because you can get contrasting points around it and each one of those blocks will be highlighted. The other option here is just done with charm squares in the middle of each star, and everything looks nice and scrappy, and that's what I'm going to make here with my charms. What we need is 1 yard of background fabric, and you want that to contrast with your charm squares. And then we're going to need 45 charm squares, and I'm going to use these called Harbor Springs from Moda, and they're just a nice variety of floral prints here. The first thing we need to do is to pick out the 5 fabrics that we want to use in the middle of each of the stars. So I'm not going to use those light ones. I might use 2 blues, 2 dark blues. That's a pretty one. I like these bigger prints here. Let's see if we can find a nice red one. So I've got the 5 right there for the centers. Then for the other 40, I'm going to pick out a variety of prints, but I'm going to make sure that they all show up against the background. So I'm not going to use these really light ones here. We'll put those aside for another project. Here are the 40 that I'm going to use in all of the patchwork. They're all going to get cut to exactly the same size. Now I can't give you all the sizes because it's not my pattern, but I've made several of Antler Quilt Designs and they're very easy to follow. Everything is all cut out now, and the next step is to take these medium squares, and we need to mark the back side of all of them on the diagonal. Now I like to use a regular pencil to draw with, but some of these are kind of dark and I'm not sure it's going to show up, so I may have to switch to my white chalk pencil. Let's just see what this looks like. You can see it on there, but if you get one that's really dark and you can't, you can always use one of these really light charcoal pencils. I'm going to take my drawn squares and my rectangle backgrounds to the sewing machine, and then we're going to take one of these squares and we're going to put it in the right hand corner here, and I'm going to stitch right along the drawn line. Just stitch right on top of your pencil mark, and go ahead and do that with all 20 of your rectangles, and that'll be half of your drawn squares used up. Now we're going to take this and fold it along that stitched line, and so all of the edges are going to meet up, and then use a dry iron and then a little steam. Then we want to trim away the back 2 layers, and I find it's easiest to do this with a pair of scissors right here at the ironing board. Now we've got a nice rectangle. So we're back at the machine. We've got the rest of the squares and these rectangles that have 1 corner on it. And now we're just going to add it to the other side. So I'm lining up on the opposite corner with the line going like this. And I'm just going to stitch again right on that line. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with all of these. Now, I am going to pick different colors. So if I've got red in this corner, I'm going to put blue on it this time. So I'm just going to mix the colors up, but I'm going to use 2 different colors every time. We'll use the same procedure to iron these that we did for the first block there, the first half of the block. We're just going to open it up, dry iron, a little bit of steam, then trim off those back 2 layers. And now we've got a nice pieced rectangle, and these will be the points for our star. I've got all the star points. the centers of the star and the corners of the star. So I'm going to take one that's going to go in the center, and then I'm going to get 4 things that are going to go around it, and I'm just going to try to pick out some that have a variety of colors. Then we've got the background that goes in the corners. So that's the entire star here. So I'm just going to sew these 2 together. I'm going to move the whole thing over a little bit here. So here's how I like to sew this together. I'm going to put these 2 right sides together, stitch them, and leave them on the machine. I'm just using a careful 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm going to grab the next 2 pieces, which is these 2, put them right sides together, and I'm going to leave those threads between the blocks. And then the last 2, again, right sides together, and bring them over. And this keeps the pieces from getting turned and twisted, and it actually makes it easier to do your block correctly. We'll just slide that over a little. Now we'll open all of these, and we'll just add these to the far side here. So this one's going to go here, put it right sides together. Then the next piece goes here. And that last corner. Now, seam allowances, they're going to go to the outside on this top row, both going to the outside, and to the outside on the bottom row. And then they're going to go towards the middle on this middle row. And I'm just finger pressing them. Now we can turn it, put them right sides together. The seam allowances are going in opposite directions, so they'll nest, and it'll be real easy to match up those intersections, and we can just do these last 2 seams. Swing it around, put these ones together, and you can see how quick these sew up. And here's one really nice thing about this star. This has a lot of extra space here. The seam doesn't go all the way to where it makes that point. So you have this nice overlapping bit here, and I think that looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and make the other 5 stars using the same method. The star blocks are all stitched up and ironed nice and flat. Now let's take the little squares and head on over to the sewing machine. Select 6 different squares, just 6 different colors, doesn't really matter which. And we're just going to sew them side by side. So I'm just going to sew one on, and sew the next one on, and sew the next one on. So I'm going to do 6 in a row. All the seam allowances can go the same way. So let's put them all that way. And I'm just going to keep making these with 6 blocks in each till I've used up all the little squares. All of these are stitched together, and I've got these background pieces that are cut exactly the same length as these ones that we stitched together. So we're going to take 2 of these guys and 1 of these, and I'm going to stitch them together. And we're going to press the seam allowance toward the background. Just a little finger press right now. And then we'll put this one on. Now we just have to stitch this onto one side of each of the stars. Now to stitch this onto here, it's easiest if you stitch it from the other side, because we can see these seams here, and when we are stitching here, we want to hit right there so that we don't sew off the tip of our star point. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I can use my prior stitching lines right there. I want to hit these two intersecting lines right there. And then when we open this up, we will have a nice pointy point here without getting our tips sewn over. So if your seam allowance is a little too big or you don't know where you're heading, your star point could look like that. And it's nice to have it nice and pointy. Now that these are done, they just get flipped around. So the first one faces this way, the second one just gets turned, the third one down, fourth one up, fifth one down. And we're just going to put some borders between them and then one border all the way around. And I'm looking at these thinking this with a little border on its own would make a really nice placemat. So you could actually make a set of placemats to match your runner with these individual blocks if you like. The top is all done. And now we need to work on turning this top into a table runner. So basically, we're going to use the same steps to finish the table runner that we would use for any small quilt. So we're going to make a small sandwich. We're going to put the backing right side down. And the backing is cut just a little bit bigger than the top. Then we're going to take some batting, and I'm using Hobbs. This is 80% cotton, 20% polyester. It's the same batting that I use in all of my quilts. It's a nice lightweight flat batting. And then I'm going to put the top right in the middle of this, so I've got a little bit of backing and batting all the way around the edges. And then I'm just going to put some pins all over it so everything will stay together. Now I'm going to take this right over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to stitch all around the outside so that everything is anchored together right along the edge. So I'm just going to go about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and that way I can get rid of these pins around here, but everything will be stuck together. And this makes it easy to put the binding on later because everything is all stitched. Now we're ready to do some quilting. So you have to decide what color thread you want to use. I'm going to use this very pale blue. It almost looks white, but it is really, really pale, but it's going to blend in pretty well on the white. Then we need to decide, how are we going to quilt this? Are we going to go in the ditch, which is right in these seams, or do we want the quilting to show a little bit? And I think in this case, since you can see a little shadowing here between where the seam allowance is and where it's not, that I'm going to go 1/4 inch away, and I'm going to use that line there to help me figure out my quilting lines. So I always like to start by going around the edge here. So I'm going to go, I'm putting my foot right on the seam. So I'm going 1/4 inch away, and I might add some pins every once in a while. So I might take a pin it here and stitch to that spot. You can always put it out on your table and put a whole bunch of pins in ahead of time, but I find that this works pretty well for me. So I'm going to go all the way around here first, and then I'll decide where I'm going to quilt it next. So I've gone around here once. Next, I'm going to go on both sides of this seam here. Now on these long stretches, because I've got feed dogs on my machine here, most sewing machines have these feed dogs, and they help move the fabric through, but they also tend to make the bottom want to move faster than the top. Because I don't have a walking foot, that's an attachment that attaches up here, and it pulls from the top also, because I don't have that. I only have the feed dog on the bottom. I have to always make sure that the bottom doesn't creep through faster. And that's why I stick a couple of pins in here and I hold it pretty firmly. Let me see if I can show you. As I'm quilting, to keep it from creeping. If you don't hold it at all, the bottom will get fed in faster and you will find excess fabric on the top. So I'm going to kind of hold the pin here and maybe even pull back here a little to keep it tight so that when I stitch, that bottom doesn't get fed in faster. Now that I've got all of these lines done, each section here is bordered, so this part will hold together pretty easily. Now I'm going to go a 1/4 inch inside this star, and I can do it in one continuous stitching line. And when I get back to the beginning here, I can go right inside this square. Again, I won't even have to stop and trim any threads. So I'm coming down the last side here, but I'm just going to keep going straight and just meet the stitching at this corner here and then pivot. There, now all I have to do is add some quilting on these patchwork blocks, and then I'm going to do the exact same quilting on all of these sections and it'll be all done. I got the whole runner quilted up and I added a little binding around the edge, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I really like the stitching showing here inside the stars and along those stripes. You can barely see the quilting from the other side, but it does outline that star. So if you want to flip this over, if you're putting a fancy centerpiece in the middle of it, you can have something plainer. Myself, I'm probably going to leave these stars showing when I've got this on my table. It turned out 17 by 54, so it's a nice big size for most tables. Now remember, at the beginning of the video, I showed you both these runners. This one just has a variety of charms in the middle, but this one has a focus fabric. And you can use little panels, you can use a fabric you like. And so I went ahead and made a whole nother runner here. And I took this fabric and I fussy cut this motif and I put that in every block here. And then I used a set of charms called Apricot Ash from Moda. And that is what all these parts are. And this one came out really nice too. I quilted this on my quilting machine so you can see a lot of the quilting there. But it just makes a nice runner whether you're using the focus fabric or you're using all charms. Now I'm very interested to know which runner you like better. I like them both. I'm a little bit partial to this flowery one, but leave me a comment down below and let me know if you like the flowery one or the red and blue one better. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the hopscotch runner. We hope you enjoyed it. Now we've got one more thing. At the end of every video, we do a giveaway. Today's giveaway is a quilt called Paper Lanterns. And this is a nice big quilt. It's got cute chickens. It's got a lot of flowers, some plaids, nice rust on the back, and the binding, I don't know if you can see it, but it's all different colors. Now it's very easy to enter the giveaways. Just click the link below that says giveaway and put in your email address and your name. And remember, we can send this quilt to whoever wins anywhere in the world, so good luck. Now, if you like our tutorials and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!